Okay, so in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook to a1 is the last move by white. Can we capture the pawn on f4? Probably no. How about, because at the moment I think there's a mating net, because the king, white's king cannot go to the third rank because of the rook on f3. So it's just a matter of maybe pushing a pawn or what. Or maybe we're not playing for mate here. Maybe we're just playing for material advantage. But can you think of a good move here? If we move the rook to c3, what happens? Okay, so that forces white to capture the pawn because it will be mate on the next moves. Okay. So for example, if white tries something like maybe doubling the rooks here, so this rook check will be met by just sacrificing the rook. So black is up in material here. Okay, next. In this next position, it is black's turn to move, and bishop to f6 is the last move by white. So white is threatening to capture the rook on h8, but the knight can capture that, right? No. That would be wrong because of the multiple threats by white. Okay, there's actually a mating threat if ever black tries to castle. So what's the good move here? Well, the good move here is actually black can capture the bishop for free. Why and how? It is by pushing the pawn first, right? After pushing the pawn, okay, that will drive the queen away from defending the bishop. So the bishop is actually forced to move, and we can just capture the bishop, and that is winning for black. Okay, so by analyzing the position first, and seeing that the bishop is currently protected by only one piece, which is the queen, and kicking the queen out of this file is the right move, because once the queen moves anywhere, the bishop will be taken for free. Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Queen to g3 is the last move by white. Okay, so in here the queen is currently being protected by the king and also the bishop. The bishop is also currently being protected by the king. So the king here is practically overloaded with the duty of protecting two pieces at the same time. Yep. So if you are to capture, which are you going to capture first? So there are options here to capture the rook, to capture the queen, or to capture the bishop. So what is the best piece to capture in this scenario? So if we capture the queen first, that is with a check, so that forces the king to move, and that forces the king to capture the queen, and then capture the rook on d1, and now the bishop on e3 is hanging. Rook takes e3. Okay, next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Bishop to a4 is the last move by black. So black here is threatening to capture the rook on d1. Do we have a mating threat here? Maybe we have. So let's try a daring move here, which is rook to d8. Okay, so that forces the rook to capture d8 because the rook on c8 is actually hanging. So after rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and now the king is forced to move to g7. And what's the next move here? Yes, it is rook takes f8. Why is it correct? Because the finishing move here is bishop takes c5, which forks the king and the rook, and now bishop takes rook wins the game for white. Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move, and we can see that the bishop on b2 is hanging, but there's a mating threat here. There's a mating threat. White is actually threatening to mate the black's king by moving the rook to c8, and that is a check, and that will force black to capture on c8, and then queen takes c8 is checkmate. After queen takes e8, once the knight defends the king with knight to e8. So capturing the bishop immediately is not a good move. So what should be done first here? Okay, so in this scenario, I think the best move is to actually threaten one of the two pieces that are threatening to mate the king. So what can we threaten? The queen or the rook? And how? Okay. If we, I don't know if knight move here is correct, but yeah, I think knight move is correct here. And it's preparatory to defending the king afterwards. So if you are to move your knight and threaten one of the two pieces that are threatening to mate the king, which knight are you going to move and to which square are you going to place it? Okay, if you're thinking of moving the knight to f6, knight on f6 to d7, then that's wrong. And you'll see why. How about knight to e4? That's also wrong. What else? What else can you think of? Because capturing right away, maybe that's correct. You know why? Yeah, we haven't thought of that. Because we can just cover immediately with the knight. And after rook takes b8, queen takes b8. So black wins a bishop. So it's like the X-ray defense, you know, by covering the check with the knight, that actually solves the problem. Okay. Yep. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Bishop to g4 is the last move by black. Can you see a double attack here? So we can see here that black's rook on a8 is hanging and h7 pawn is vulnerable, and we can attack those squares in one move at the same time, and that is by placing the queen on e4, threatening to checkmate on h7, and also to capture the rook on a8. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Bishop to d6 is the last move by black. This position is quite complicated because there are many pieces that are close to each other. But in analyzing positions like this, we should always look at the tactical plays that we can do and the tactics that are already present in the position, like pin, right? And the possible discovered attacks, okay? And look at the position of the king and immediately think of the checks that you can make, okay? So by analyzing, can we check black's king here? Yes, by taking the pawn on g5, and that is actually a discovered attack, because once we remove the knight here, it will open the line, the queen's line, to the black's queen. So knight takes g5, check, and then queen takes d7. But not immediately that, because actually, the knight is being protected by the queen. The queen is being protected by the knight. So knight takes, and that forces the rook to capture, and then we can just capture this one, and that's also winning. Yeah, because capturing the queen will free the pin, right? So that's not a good move. So the best move is to just capture the rook, and that is also winning the game because it wins material. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. D5 is the last move by black. Okay. Okay. So we can mate black's king if not for the queen and the rook, right? Because the battery, the queen and rook battery, is quite strong. And we can check the king on e8 by moving the rook to e8. But that won't be possible because there are two defenders to that square, the rook and the queen. So the goal here is to drive away the queen. Okay. So maybe we can do it like this. All right. And then maybe we can. Now the knight is hanging. So maybe change of plans here. We can have change of plans. Maybe we can check, right? But what happens if we capture the knight? The queen will just simply capture it, right? So, what's the correct move here? The next move here. Yeah, we can stick to the goal of mating the king by again I don't know, maybe we can threaten it. Yeah, let's threaten the queen, and then and now we can capture the knight, right? Why? Because the rook is on f7. So once we capture the knight on b6 and the queen takes on f7, the rook on d8 will be hanging. So we can just capture that. And that's winning. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Rook to d8 is the last move by black. Okay, so do we have a discovered attack here? Can we launch a discovered attack or maybe other tactical plays? So in complicated positions like this, we need to analyze deeply. Can we check on f7? Can we place the queen on f7? Yes, we can. Then what? Then after that, what? Let's capture, right? Okay. Now, what's the next move? Yes, because capturing the by capturing using the pawn on f6, that actually opens this file, right? And there's a threat of winning material here. Can you see? And that is by placing the knight on e6, that forces the rook to capture, but after that the rook on d8 will be hanging, so we can just simply capture that, and that's winning. Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Queen to h6 is the last move by white. Okay, can we sacrifice the bishop? That will be useless, right? Are we playing for material advantage here? Yes, we are. There's no immediate mating threat. Can we place the queen on f3? Yes. And now we can capture the rook, right? And that's winning. So maybe you're thinking, why did white move its rook to e3? Well, the reason is, if white decides to place the rook here, for example, the next move will be what? Yeah, the bishop can capture that, and the rook captures, but there's this follow-up move here, and that's a mate. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen to c6 is the last move by black, threatening to mate on g2. So the best move here is to prevent that mate first by moving the bishop to e4, and that's actually forced. Why did black capture the bishop? Okay, the reason is, if black decides to not capture the bishop, the next move will be rook to h5, and that forces black to capture the rook on h5, but that opens the diagonal towards the h7 pawn, and queen takes h7 is checkmate. Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook to c7 is the last move by white. Can we capture the pawn on a2? Yes, we can. And now this is multiple x-ray tactics. Can we capture the pawn on f2 with the rook? That won't be the good move. So rook takes a2 is the good move here, is the best move. How about the follow-up move here? What's the follow-up move that we can make? We can actually capture the queen immediately, and then so that's the x-ray tactic here. Okay, so black ends up a rook up in the game. Okay, next. In this next position, it is white's turn to move. Queen to d5 is the last move by black. And I think queen to b8 is a good move here. Okay. And after that, it should be the queen to capture the f8 pawn, not the rook. Okay. Because if you capture with the rook, that will leave the h1 rook vulnerable, and the queen will capture that. Okay. Next. In this next position, it is black's turn to move. Queen takes b7 is the last move by white. Can we skewer the queen and the bishop? I think yes, we can. But now the queen is actually threatening to capture the bishop on d6. So we should do something about that first, and that is by, maybe you're thinking of moving the knight to e5, but knight takes e5 and bishop takes e5 will I don't know, but I just think that maybe the best move here is rook b6. Yeah, rook b6 is the best move here, and after rook b6 we can simply capture the bishop on b7. Okay, next. In this next position, it is white's turn to move. Rook to c8 is the last move by black. Okay, so there's a battery of queen and rook here for both sides. What tactical play can we make here? Okay. If we capture the bishop on d7, what happens? Of course, black will capture the queen. Okay, so many of black's pieces here are overloaded. I mean, the knight is protecting the bishop on d7, and also the rook on a8, and the rook on a8 is being protected also by the rook on c8, and the queen is being protected by the rook on c8 also, and by the bishop. So I'm thinking of capturing the rook on a8. Okay, so what happens after that move is the rook leaves its defense of the queen. Okay, So now we can capture the knight or the bishop on d7 with the knight on c5, and that opens the file, the line of the queen to the black's queen. So we can so after that we can, what can we do here? We can capture the queen, right? And then capture the knight. And rook to a1 will be met by bishop to f1. So it's not a mate. And white ends up a knight up in the game, okay? Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Bishop to c2 is the last move by black. Can we simply pin? Nope. This is black's piece. Okay. So black is a bishop up. Is there a mating threat? Yeah, what happens if we move the queen to f7? Or maybe, I don't know. That won't be good because, yeah, I think the best move here, because the queen is currently threatening to capture the pawn once the white's queen leaves the protection of that pawn. So to still protect this pawn and at the same time attack the pawn on g7, the best move will be queen to f6. Okay, so why is it a good move? Because black cannot capture because of the pin, right? The rook is pinning the pawn against the king, and now black must make a check to somehow prevent or maybe just delay the checkmate. So king takes, and there's no way to defend that pawn. Okay, and that's winning. So it's a beautiful move, actually. So this pawn is being protected by this queen, and to threaten checkmate, white must attack that pawn, the pawn on g7. So queen to f6 is a really good move here. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. E takes f5 is the last move by white. Okay, so we can see that the queen is really busy here. White's queen is busy protecting the rook. Okay, so can we drive away the queen from protecting the rook? Is there a way? Yeah, maybe push the pawn Okay, so the queen moves to g4, still protecting the rook. Okay, so the next move will be h5, and that forces rook to capture the rook. You see, so push this and then push this and then capture the queen. All right, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Bishop takes f5 is the last move by white. And that is a check. That means that we need to do something about it. It's either we capture it. Okay, now that we have captured the bishop, the knight is threatening the queen, right? Do we have a mating threat here? There is. Can we check on d1 or e1? No, that would be wrong. How about, yeah, I think, what about h1? That would also be wrong. So the best move here, how about sacrificing the rook? That would be wrong. Okay, we can capture that knight by actually forking the king and the knight, right? See, and we can capture that. Okay, so in this scenario, you can actually choose between capturing the knight and the rook, right? Because queen h1 might be tempting, because you can capture the rook after the king moves, right? But that is not a very good move, because remember, once the knight is positioned here and there is a queen, that is a very dangerous combination. Okay, and also the rook on d7 is hanging. So if you can see, the knight is really powerful. So if you have a choice of capturing the rook or a knight, I'll go with the knight in this scenario, because this is really powerful, and at the same time, capturing the knight will protect the rook on d7. So that's the right move there. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight to g4, check is the last move by black. Okay, so since it's a check, we are bound to capture it. Okay, now queen to h4, check. Okay, so can we just block it? Yes, of course. So that's the right move. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook to e6 is the last move by white. Okay, so the queen is being threatened by the rook. Okay, so we have an option to simply capture the rook, But this rook is already hanging. And once we capture the rook with the queen, the rook on black's rook on d2 will be hanging. So what's the best move here? The best move is to capture the bishop first. Check. So since it's a check, white is forced to do something about it because he's under check. So he needs to capture back. And now we can capture the rook for free. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. h6 is the last move by black. Okay. What's the best move here? If we capture on f7, what will happen? Maybe we can try. Okay. So what's the next move here? Shall we place the rook on d7? Yes, that's a good move. And then what's the follow-up move here? To maximize the potential of this passed pawn. What happens if we push the pawn? Okay. So rook takes d7, and now we can promote this to queen. Okay, so that's the correct sequence. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight takes d5 is the last move by black. Can we capture the knight with the bishop? Yes. Now black tries to pin that bishop against the queen, so the bishop cannot capture the bishop, right? So what shall we do to free the queen from the pin? I mean the bishop from the pin. Is there a way? Or maybe we can add a defender to that. Maybe we can, I don't know, maybe we can move the knight again. So bishop takes. Moving the knight is not a correct move. Yeah, maybe we can capture one of the attackers. So at the moment, the bishop is being attacked by black with two pieces, the bishop and the rook. So what happens if we capture the bishop? He is forced to capture with the pawn, right? Now we can um, capture the rook. Okay, so at the moment the bishop is still being pinned by the rook, but all of a sudden black's queen became really busy protecting many pieces altogether. So the queen is busy protecting the rook on d8 and also the pawn on e6. So the next move here is actually bishop takes e6, because that is a check, and once the queen captures, the white's queen can capture the rook on d8. Okay, next. In this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook takes a4 is the last move by white. Okay. The knight is being attacked. Okay. So is there a way for actually the bishop is defending the knight, but what could be a tactical play that we can use here to win material? Maybe we're playing for material advantage here. Okay, so what happens if we move the knight to b4? Okay, that's the correct move, because that move, the knight threatens to capture on the pawn here, with of course with the rook to create multiple attacks. That's the correct move there, because what happened is knight b4 isolates this rook and also creates multiple threats, like after a couple of moves, maybe black can push this pawn and also threatening to push this pawn, and there are many counter plays here for black. Okay, so that's the reason why he captures the knight. Okay, next. Okay, in this position it is white's turn to move. Knight takes g3 is the last move by black. Can we simply capture the knight? Yes, but after this move, black is threatening to checkmate the king here. Okay, so how are we going to defend? What's the best defense here? Because once we yeah, what happens if we move the rook here? That would be wrong, because of the threat of queen takes g3. So what's the best defense here? What if queen? Nope. Would it be the knight? Yeah, maybe this moves. Or yep, that's a correct move. Yeah, that solves the problem because rook to g2 is the correct next move here. Okay, that blocks the check and also protects the pawn on g3. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. c3 is the last move by black, and black is threatening to promote the pawns. Okay, so what is the best way here to for white to win the game, or maybe equalize? I don't know. Or maybe there's a mate here, right? What happens if we check? What if here? Okay, there's a mating threat. Okay, what happens if we go here? Okay, we can now capture that. Did you see what happened there? Okay, so by moving the king to f6, white is actually attacking the only escape square that black has. So this is the only escape square that black has. Once white checks on here on c8, but to prevent black's king from going to e7, king to f6 is a good move. So black tries to drive away the king, but king f7 is still attacking the e7 square, and now black has no choice but to just sacrifice the rook for him to escape. Okay, but still losing the game. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Rook takes f6 is the last move by black. Okay, so for this position, I think we have a multiple tactics that we can apply here. So can we capture the rook first? Yes, we can. Next, can we Okay, if we capture the bishop, black will just capture with the rook, right? What if we push the pawn? Okay, that's the right move. Now, after pushing the pawn, black's king, we can put the black's king in danger here. Or maybe not, but so what's the good move here? Next move. Can we simply take the bishop now? What happens if we take the bishop? Or maybe we can check the king again. Okay, because the knight is the weakness here. The knight is the weakness. The knight on h6 will be hanging after a couple of moves. So after knight to f3, check, then the knight is hanging. We can just capture that. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook to e2 is the last move by white. Okay, so in here we can see that the knight on c1 is being protected by the rook on c2. Okay. Once we capture the rook on c2, the rook on e2 captures back, but now we can add an attacker to that knight, which is this rook. So after the king moves, because it's a check, we can capture this knight with the rook captured back with the bishop, and black is winning. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Rook to c6 or c3 is the last move by black. It's a check, so we are forced to move the king, or maybe not. Maybe we can capture that. Yeah. And then black is actually threatening to promote this pawn, right? So is there a way for us to stop that? Maybe yes. That is by maybe moving this rook here. Yes. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight to e5 is the last move by black. Can we simply capture the rook on f7 because it's being threatened by white's bishop? If so, then yes, let's capture that. And it's not the best move. Okay, so what's the best move here in this scenario? I think the best move here is to maybe there's a way to capture it for free, right? That's why we cannot just simply capture it. And I think by kicking the knight away. All right. What happens is by kicking the knight away, the king actually moved away from the rook. We can just capture the bishop, the knight, and then we can just simply push this. Okay, and then now let's capture that. Okay, so maybe some of you got confused what happened there. Okay, so By pushing the pawn, we are kicking away the knight, right? So the knight has no square to go to. Okay, if you notice that. The knight has no good square to go to. If he moves here, the rook will capture. The rook here cannot capture back because it's being pinned by the bishop against the king. Okay? If we move anywhere else, here, it will be just taken. So black doesn't have a choice but to move the king. But after that, this is the move, threatening to capture the rook still. Okay, and once the rook moves here, actually I think the better move here for black would be to retreat to f8. Okay, but since that's the move by the computer, let's see what happens once white pushes the pawn. There's no immediate way for black to capture that pawn, right? Aside from sacrificing the rook. And the bishops are really powerful because afterwards we can, or maybe black can, or white can pin this, and that will be really devastating. And the bishops are powerful and the pawns are powerful as well. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. f3 is the last move by black. Shall we just capture the rook, or shall we capture with the pawn first? Okay. If we capture the rook, that would be wrong. Why? Because of the strong possibility of promoting, the pawn. The pawn will be promoted afterwards. Okay, so what's the good move here? So maybe the good move here is, since the rook is already hanging, white's rook is also hanging, so why not capture a valuable piece first? That would be wrong too. Why? Because there's a check after that. Okay, so what's the good move here? So let's maybe pin that. That won't be also good because of what? Because of the check. Okay, so can you see the best move here? The best move here is a discovered attack. If you are thinking of pushing the pawn to g4, check, then your answer is correct. Because after that, we can just simply capture this rook. That's a bit tricky, right? Okay, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Knight to e4 is the last move by white. So the black's queen is being threatened. What happens if we make a check on a1 and make another check on g2? Okay, Can we capture that? What happens if we capture? Of course, we will not capture with the rook because it will just be a simple trade. So we capture with the bishop, okay? And then we retreat the rook, okay? So that's a tactical play as well to win material, okay? So in this position, you may have thought of maybe capturing with the rook, right? But that would be a simple trade, and that will lead to draw, or maybe even black losing. But with bishop takes, okay, and then knight takes, or maybe in this case queen makes a check, then just retreat the rook, and then black is winning in material here, okay? Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight to f6 is the last move by black. Okay. The black knight is being attacked by two of white's pieces, so I think we can simply capture it, unless there's a very strong counterplay by black after capturing that. So if we are to capture the knight, which piece are we going to use to capture it? Shall we capture it with the rook or the queen? Yeah, I think the best way is to capture with the queen, with the rook. Why? Because if we capture with the queen, then we will be leaving the bishop on c2 hanging, and after queen c1 checked, the white's queen, or the black's queen will be capturing the bishop on c2. So let's capture with the rook, okay? If white captures with the queen c1, this is what I mean, okay, and then queen takes, so there's a counterplay. So the best move is capture with the rook, okay? Next, in this next position, it is white's turn to move. Knight to d4 check is the last move by black. Okay, so there are two pieces that we can use to capture the knight, okay? We can either capture with the bishop or with the rook. I'm thinking of capturing with the rook. Why? Because capturing with the rook is the correct move. Because if we capture with the bishop, then black will capture with the capture the knight, and that is a check. So white is forced to move the king because that's a check, and then black will capture the bishop. All right, so white might lose here because two bishops against a rook is powerful, okay? So by capturing the knight with the rook, what happens is the possibility of bishop takes d5 will be met by rook takes d5. So at the end of the exchange, it will be equal. Okay. Next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Knight to c5 is, knight to f5 is the last move by white. Okay, do we have a mating threat here? What happens if we push the pawn? If we push the pawn to e3, or maybe if we move the knight to g4, okay, let's try. Okay, and let's capture that, and queen takes. Now we can capture the bishop. Okay, so that's a play for material advantage. So let's break it down. Okay, by pushing the pawn, white is forced to capture. Say if he capture with the knight first, same thing, black will capture with the bishop, and white will capture with the pawn, and then queen takes e3. That forks the king and the bishop. Okay, so after that we can capture this. All right, next, in this next position, it is black's turn to move. Rook to a6 is the last move by white. So at the moment, the bishop is being pinned against the queen, and there are two defenders to this bishop, and there are also two attackers. So adding one more attacker to that bishop is the good move, is the best move. So in chess analysis, it is important to count. Okay, so that's why counting is one of the tactical play that we can employ. So counting the defender and counting the attacker. So in this case, we counted that we have two attackers to this knight, to this bishop, and white has two attackers or defenders to this bishop. So by adding one more attacker, that forces white to give up material. Okay, next,